Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something that creeps in when the world gets quiet. When the fridge hums like a lo-fi playlist, and your knees remind you that youth doesn't come with a warranty. You're sitting there, just you and the hum, and then, bam, a memory slides in like a notification you didn't ask for. Because tonight, we're talking secrets. Not the scandalous tabloid kind. The ones that live deep in your chest. The ones you carry like an old voicemail you've saved for too long. Some of them you meant to share. Some you typed out but never sent. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and what time it is right now in the comments. I want to see who else is wide awake with ghosts of their own. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. Together. You shuffle over to that bottom drawer in your bedroom, the one that sticks a little and always squeaks like it's warning you. You usually avoid it. But tonight, you pull it open. Inside sits an old slide phone, early 2010s vintage, the kind with the glowing keys that look like a tiny dance floor. You turn it on, not because you expect it to work, but because something in you wants to see what's still there. Shockingly, the battery's still alive. The screen glows like an old friend showing up at your door after years apart. In the drafts folder, 5 unsent messages, all of them for your daughter. One says, "I'm sorry I raised my voice that day." Another, "I saw you crying in the kitchen and wished you'd tell me what was wrong." They're small, quiet truths. But you remember how it felt writing them, like swallowing cold coffee. Bitter, unnecessary, but somehow still part of your routine. There's even a long draft explaining a choice you made back in 1985, how you sold your first car to pay your brother's tuition, never telling your family. Back then you thought, they're too young to understand. Now you wonder, would they even care? The silence wasn't because you didn't love them. It was because you did. You didn't want to weigh them down with your past. But silence, it builds distance, and you don't notice until the day you want to call them but can't find the words. Remember Y2K in 1999? The whole world panicked, convinced computers would crash and planes would fall from the sky. People bought bottled water and built bunkers, just in case. That's what keeping secrets feels like. Like you're guarding against a meltdown that might never happen. And just like those computers, your old phone didn't crash. It just stayed quiet, like it agreed with your choice to stay silent. Experts still debate this. Should you be totally honest with your kids once you hit 65? Some say yes, connect while you still can. Others laugh and say, be honest and they'll just be mad you never told them sooner. You thought maybe you'd drop these thoughts into a Christmas card, or maybe text it into the family group chat, the one where you still don't really get how stickers work, but every time you try, you hear that tired voice. Why do you always bring up the past? So, once again, save as draft. Sometimes a secret isn't heavy because of what, it is, but because of when it gets told. Like a carton of milk left too long. You don't open it because you're scared of the smell, not the milk. You glance at the phone one more time before sliding it back into the drawer. Your thumb hovers over, delete all messages. But you don't. Maybe someday, Someone will read them and understand. You tried. You closed the drawer slowly. The squeak sounds like a sigh that's been waiting years to be heard. And that was only the beginning. You sit back in your chair, and suddenly, that feeling returns. Not regret. Exactly, no, it's subtler than that. It's like putting on a jacket and finding a wrinkled 20 in the pocket, only it's not money. It's a memory. This one, it's about money, though. And not the kind you talk about over dinner. It started with a zippered wallet. Your favorite. The leather one with a coin pouch that always smelled like winter and loose change. You remember the day you unzipped it in front of your daughter, just trying to grab a few bills for groceries. And somehow, that moment spiraled into the conversation. So, how much do you actually have saved, Mom? Moment. Cue the awkward silence so thick, even the air gave up trying to move. You didn't mean to lie. You just didn't want to answer. Because once you reveal numbers, the questions flood in. Why didn't you invest more? Wait, you still have that much in cash? Why aren't you downsizing? It's funny how a simple zip sound can feel like the launch of a courtroom trial. There's this bizarre expectation that once you hit 65, your finances become family property. Everyone suddenly wants access, like you're not a person anymore, just an ATM with feelings, and of course, you're not against helping. But you also know what it felt like the first time someone looked at your savings not with pride, but with calculation. It reminded you of a history class moment, the Panic of 1837. A total financial collapse in the U.S. triggered by overspeculation and bank failures. Banks shut down overnight, and suddenly, trust in money vanished. You felt a bit like that too. Your financial trust vanished. You're still haunted by the time your nephew asked if you really needed 2 bedrooms, as if your guest room were somehow an act of rebellion. Or your granddaughter casually suggesting you liquidate your assets like she was on a finance podcast. There's a weird little fact people don't talk about. In some cultures, seniors never share financial details, not even with their spouse. It's considered impolite, sacred even, like asking someone their weight but with more zeros. That tradition? Yeah. You're starting to respect it more and more, because here's the thing, once they know how much you've got, they start planning it for you. Suddenly, your peaceful retirement turns into a group project no one assigned. Experts still argue over this one. Some say open financial transparency builds trust. Others warn it invites unnecessary stress and conflict, especially when the next generation feels entitled to make decisions they don't yet understand. You used to keep your bank book under your mattress. Then, you got smart and went digital. Now you keep everything locked in that one password-protected folder labeled recipes. No one's checking there, except maybe your granddaughter if she's feeling hungry and nosy. But you've learned. You've learned that there's power in quiet decisions. You don't have to explain every transaction, every choice, every little nest egg. Because some things aren't secrets, they're just yours. You once considered having the talk again, laying it all out over coffee and blueberry muffins. Maybe printing out statements, highlighting the totals, giving each person a copy, like some kind of financial Oprah. But then you remembered, last time you offered to split a dinner bill, they acted like you were staging a protest. So, maybe not. The thing about money is, it changes people, even when it's not theirs. Especially when it's not theirs. And you've seen enough late-night documentaries and early-morning Facebook rants to know that inheritance can tear apart even the closest families. You zip the wallet closed slowly now, like sealing away something sacred. The coins rattle, softly, like applause from a ghost who understands your silence. And just like that, you remind yourself, peace isn't always about sharing everything. Sometimes it's about knowing when to keep things quietly zipped away, and if anyone asks, just smile, offer them a cookie, and change the subject to something lighter, like weather, or the fact that you still have no idea how Venmo works. Because tonight's story, it's only just warming up. You're in the kitchen now. The one you've stood in 1,000 times, barefoot on cold tile, the hum of the fridge a constant companion, and that one flickering light that no one else seems to notice. You're making tea, not because you need it, but because the ritual gives your hands something to do while your mind walks into places it hasn't visited in years. The kettle whistles, and just like that, another memory pours in. This one isn't about phones or money, it's about health. Not your health in the way they ask about at checkups or on those endless forms at the pharmacy. No, it's about the things you don't say when your family asks. How are you feeling? You always answer, oh, you know, fine, with a little shrug and a half smile. It's practically a reflex, but sometimes fine hides things. Not big dramatic diagnoses, just subtle truths, aches that don't go away, pills you take without mentioning, appointments you don't put on the family calendar. You're not lying, you're protecting. You remember your mother doing the same. She'd wave off every cough, every limp, until one day the doctor looked too serious. And even then she said, "It's nothing, don't make a fuss." Maybe you learned it from her, or maybe it's just what people do when they get older and don't want to become the topic of conversation. You ever hear about that ancient Roman practice where people over a certain age would pretend to feel great so their families wouldn't try to send them off to quiet places early? It sounds absurd now, but when your son says, "You've been forgetting things lately," you feel a weird chill, as if your memory's been put on trial. You don't want them to worry, but you also don't want to be managed. There was that time a few years ago when you fainted in the backyard. Nothing major. You stood up too fast, the heat got to you. But instead of calling someone, you just sat there, letting the sun crawl across your arms until you felt strong enough to stand. No one ever knew, because if they had known, they might have taken your car keys, or started showing up unannounced, or worse, treated you like a fragile heirloom. Experts still can't agree on this. Should older adults be fully open about their health with family? One camp says yes, transparency builds support. The other warns it leads to overprotection and loss of independence. You personally have seen both play out, and neither feels completely right. You tuck your bottle of blood pressure meds behind the canned peaches. You delete that reminder app your daughter installed just to help. You schedule appointments for weekday mornings when no one's around to ask where you're going. It's not deception, it's dignity. And here's the thing, the moment you open the door to every health detail, they don't just walk in, they bring furniture. Suddenly you're not a person, you're a project, a checklist, a Google Calendar entry with notes like follow up on mom's labs. You can still laugh, you still walk without help, you still remember the lyrics to your favorite 70s songs, but say one wrong thing. Admit to forgetting why you walked into the kitchen. And suddenly you're getting pamphlets on brain aging. You once read a strange fact that stuck with you. Octopuses, when sick, often crawl off into a dark corner to be alone, not because they want to die, but because they don't want to bother the rest of the tank. You feel that. So no, you don't always tell the whole truth. When they ask how you slept, you say, fine, even if you were up till 4 a.m., wondering if the new mole on your back has always looked like that. You sip your tea now, lukewarm and slightly bitter, like most of life's realities, and let the silence settle in, because you know this. Peace doesn't come from oversharing. It comes from deciding which truths to guard like old love letters. And when your daughter texts, "Everything okay, Mom?" you reply, "All good here, just having tea." Because in this moment, that's true enough. And the night still has more to say. The hallway feels longer than usual tonight. You run your fingers along the wall, right over that tiny dent where someone, probably your grandson, rammed a toy car a decade ago. You never fixed it. It's small, but it tells a story. Like most things you've kept around, you pass the bookshelf. The third shelf sags slightly in the middle, weighed down by photo albums and dusty paperbacks with broken spines. There, tucked behind a copy of Tuesdays with Maury, is the envelope. Yes. That envelope. It's thick, heavier than it looks. Inside are handwritten letters, a few old photos, and something even more delicate. Your thoughts about the past. Not the shiny, scrapbooking kind, the stuff you've never shared, especially not with family. Tonight, you wonder again whether you'll ever let them read it. This one's about relationships, the ones you've had that your family doesn't fully know about, or shouldn't. Maybe it was a high school love who wrote poems and smelled like lavender soap. Or the neighbor from 2 blocks down who brought you soup just because for 3 months straight in 1989. And maybe, just maybe, there was someone in between your divorce and that Facebook status they all saw as single and thriving, but you didn't tell them. Why? Because even grown children can't always see their parents as full humans, with passion, with mistakes, with late-night regrets and 3 a.m. playlists full of love songs from another time. It's a truth as old as time. Children want their parents to be safe, predictable, and neatly filed into the wisdom category. Not messy, not yearning. Definitely not romantic. You remember reading once about Eleanor Roosevelt, how after FDR's death, it was revealed she'd had a deeply emotional, possibly romantic friendship with a woman named Lorena Hickok. Historians still argue about it. Some call it inappropriate, others beautiful. The lesson? Even legends have untold chapters. And you've got a few of those too. One of your letters talks about a man you met at a jazz club during a solo trip to New Orleans. You never even learned his last name. But the way he held your hand during My Funny Valentine, well, that moment aged better than most things in your life, but you've never mentioned it. Not because you're ashamed, but because you know how quick people are to reframe your life into something they can understand. A strange fact? In some Scandinavian countries, it's common for seniors to date well into their 80s, and not just date. They celebrate it. There are even government-sponsored dance nights. And here you are, hiding your second kiss with a travel agent named Rick behind a picture of your wedding day. Experts still debate whether it's healthy or helpful for older adults to be fully open with their families about past loves or current interests. One side says yes, it creates closeness. The other warns that unsolicited honesty often causes discomfort or even judgment, and let's face it, nobody wants their 35-year-old son to say, "Wait, you dated a bartender?" with that voice. That tone that drips with disbelief, like they can't imagine you having desires after 40, so you kept it. Quiet, safe, yours. You slide the envelope back into place, letting it rest behind the sagging shelf. It makes a small thud, as if relieved to be back in the dark. That's the thing about secrets. They aren't always burdens. Sometimes they're heirlooms, too fragile to pass down, too meaningful to throw away. You straighten the book in front of it and chuckle softly. If anyone ever does find it, well, they'll finally know why you never deleted that Miles Davis playlist. And tonight, you walk away from the bookshelf like it never happened. But we both know it did. And that, dear listener, is where things start getting personal. The windows open just a crack, and there's that low rustle again. Wind in the trees, soft like a whisper through old lace curtains. You pause by the sill, fingers brushing the edge of the glass. You've always liked this hour. That pocket of night when the house finally stops pretending, when even the refrigerator decides it's earned a break. But tonight, you feel something. Stir, not in the trees, not outside, in you. It's about the choices you've made. Specifically the mistakes, the big ones, the ones your family only knows half the story about, if that. You've told them the safe version, the edited one, the PG cut with a hopeful ending and lessons learned. But the real version, yeah, you've kept that under lock and key, like the time you lent money to a friend, a real friend, who vanished faster than a bad Tinder date. Or the time you turned down a job because you were scared of failing, not because of family priorities like you always said. Or maybe even that chapter in your life when things got dark, emotionally, financially, all of it, and you wore a smile like a coat 2 sizes too big. People don't like hearing about failure from the people they expect to have all the answers. That's just a fact. You ever hear of Thomas Edison's first invention? It wasn't the light bulb. It was a vote recorder for Congress, and it flopped so hard, no one even used it. Total failure. But nobody remembers that. They just remember the light. That's what we do. We edit people down to their victories. So when your daughter looks at you with those "you've always been so strong" eyes, you smile and nod. You don't say, "Actually, I nearly lost the house once." Or, "I spent 2 years pretending I was okay when I wasn't." Because you know what comes next. Advice you didn't ask for. Worry, control, maybe even judgment wrapped in love's clothing. There's this weird truth no one talks about. The older you get, the more your family starts to treat your past like a spreadsheet. They want to understand every bad choice, label it, fix it retroactively, as if healing can be crowdsourced. Experts still debate whether older adults should share their deepest regrets with family. Some say it promotes connection. Others say it shifts burdens unnecessarily, turning children into therapists. You lean toward the second group. Because you've seen it, you open up about something raw, and suddenly Thanksgiving dinner turns into a self-help group. With pie, you don't need that. There's an old wooden box in your closet. Inside are receipts, old notes, a letter you wrote to yourself in 1976 that still smells faintly like cigarettes and rain. You read it sometimes when the world feels too light. It reminds you that you've been through worse and came out the other side. A strange fact. In Japanese culture, there's a concept called wabi-sabi, the appreciation of beauty in imperfection. Cracks, scars, things worn by time. You love that. You feel like that. And you wish just once your family could. Look at your mistakes like that, not as things to fix, but as proof that you lived. You brush your hand over the window pane now, where a tiny smudge of something clings to the glass. You think, let it stay. Not everything needs to be wiped clean. You sigh, and just before you turn off the light, you whisper, quiet enough that only the night hears you. They don't need to know everything, because sometimes peace doesn't come from being understood. Sometimes it comes from being allowed to hold your own story. Even the messy chapters, especially those. And we're not done yet, are we? There's more ahead, just around the bend. The stairs creak louder now, or maybe your ears are just better at catching old things that want to speak. You pause halfway down, hand resting on the rail, and for a second you feel like a ghost haunting your own house. It's quiet. Too quiet. Not the good kind like Sunday mornings with a crossword and soft jazz. No, this is the heavy quiet that wraps around you like a coat you didn't ask to wear, and that's when it hits you. Loneliness. Not in the dramatic movie way. Just the regular kind, the kind you feel when you realize no one's called today, or yesterday, or maybe they did and you missed it because the phone was on silent and you were watching the birds again. But here's the thing, you don't talk about it, especially not with your family. You tell them you're busy. You tell them you've got things to do, gardening, baking, book club. Even though book club hasn't met in months and your garden's more weeds than flowers these days. Because loneliness? That's the fourth secret. And you never, ever admit it. It's not pride. Okay, maybe it's a little pride, but it's also protection, because once they know you're lonely, everything changes. Suddenly, every visit feels like a chore. Every call sounds like obligation. Every just checking in is dipped in pity and sprinkled with guilt. There's a strange story from 19th century England, you might have heard it, about how widowed aristocrats would hire actors to pretend to be dinner guests, just so the neighbors wouldn't know they were dining alone. Imagine that. Paying someone to pretend you're not alone. And here you are, laughing at the idea, but you've definitely had conversations with your plants before. Experts? Oh, they've got theories. Some say admitting loneliness to family helps you reconnect. Others say it makes things worse, placing pressure on relatives already stretched thin. Still, the argument continues. You remember that one time you hinted at it, just a little, during a phone call with your eldest. Said something like, the house gets quiet these days, and they replied, yeah, same here, work's been brutal. Just like that. Moment gone. They didn't mean to brush it off, but they did. So you learned, better to smile, better to say, I've been out and about, even if out means walking laps inside Walmart just to see new faces. There's a fun fact that always stuck with you. In Sweden, they have something called fika, a cultural coffee break meant to pause and connect. Not just a coffee, a reason to sit and talk. Maybe that's what you want. Not a grand gesture, just a cup of something warm and someone to share it with. But it's not always that simple. Families move, grandkids grow up, everyone's calendar looks like a game of Tetris. You don't want to be another block they have to fit in, so you say nothing. You leave the porch light on, even if no one's coming. You wave to the mailman like he's an old friend. You take your time at the grocery store, lingering in aisles you don't even need to be in. Because it's not just about being alone, it's about not wanting to feel like a burden. That's the heart of it, isn't it? You tuck the thought away, like you always do, neatly, between your smile and your silence. And as you reach the bottom of the stairs, you mutter to yourself, "Don't forget the laundry," even though it's already done. Because sometimes, pretending to be busy is the only way to make the quiet seem smaller. But hey, don't worry, we're not done yet. There's still more to uncover. More little truths folded into the corners of this peaceful life. So keep walking with me. We've got a few more rooms to visit. The laundry room smells like old detergent and a faint, musty memory of summer rain. You stand there, hands on your hips, staring at the machine like it just told you a secret. It didn't, of course. But if it had, well, you wouldn't tell anyone. That's kind of the theme tonight, isn't it? Because now we come to the fifth thing, arguably the most tempting to share, yet the one most likely to unravel you. Opinions, not everyday stuff. Not the music's too loud, or they don't make toasters like they used to. No, this is about real opinions, your honest thoughts about the people in your family, the decisions they've made, the paths they've taken, the stuff you see but don't say. Because let's be honest, at some point after 65 you've seen enough of people to know what's likely to work, and what's a disaster with good lighting, like how your nephew keeps starting businesses that last about as long as a New Year's resolution, or how your granddaughter's boyfriend looks like he's auditioning for the role of emotionally unavailable. You've thought things, sharp things, true things, but you didn't say them, and you shouldn't, not because you're afraid, but because you know what happens when you do. Suddenly you're negative, judgmental, out of touch. All those hours you spent raising them, cheering them on, worrying yourself into early gray hair, and now, if you dare say, "That new job sounds unstable," you get hit with, "You just don't understand this generation." Experts still argue about it. Should older adults share unfiltered opinions with family? Some claim it fosters openness and dialogue. Others say it just lights a match you can't put out. You once read about Benjamin Franklin, how he believed in writing letters full of advice to his children and friends. But he never sent half of them. He kept them in a drawer, rereading them privately. Maybe he knew the same thing you do. Sometimes the advice helps more not being said. Because here's the secret. People don't really want the truth. They want validation, and giving validation while holding back what you really think. That's an Olympic sport in your age bracket. There's that weird fact you came across once. Parrots, if you teach them phrases as babies, will often keep those phrases forever, but rarely learn new ones later. You think about that every time your son repeats the same relationship mistakes and asks for your thoughts. You nod, smile, say, "Whatever makes you happy." Then go into the laundry room and whisper to the dryer, "It won't." It's not about being mean. It's about preserving the fragile piece that family hangs on. You've seen it too many times. The wrong opinion dropped at the wrong holiday dinner turns into a feud that lasts longer than most streaming series. You've learned to zip it, so you keep your thoughts tucked away like those old birthday cards you didn't toss, even though the glitter got everywhere. You hold your tongue when your daughter says she's starting a juice cleanse. You nod when your grandson says college is a scam and he's gonna make it big on Twitch. And inside maybe you think, "Oh honey, good luck." But outside you just say, "Let me know how it goes." Because the peace you've worked so hard to keep, it's worth more than being right. You fold a towel, one of those thick ones from the 90s that somehow still absorbs more emotion than water, and think, this is what wisdom really looks like. Not the knowing, the choosing not to say, and as you walk back upstairs the floor creaks softly as if it agrees. We're getting close now. Just a few more secrets between you and a peaceful night. Let's keep going. The best is yet to whisper. The bedroom's dim now, with that soft amber glow from the lamp that's been there longer than your youngest grandchild. You run your hand along the dresser, past the framed photos and the tiny ceramic dish that holds loose buttons, safety pins, and a single earring that's been missing its pair since 2003. And here it comes. The sixth secret. Your health. Not just the stuff that's already out in the open. Not the prescriptions neatly labeled on the bathroom shelf, or the occasional, "I'm just a little tired today." No. We're talking about the aches you don't mention. The doctor visits you brush off. The days when you wake up and something new hurts and you think, a surprise guest. You keep most of it to yourself. On purpose. Why? Because the moment you say, "My knee's been bothering me," it begins. The swarm of concern, the sudden tone shift in every conversation, the slow downgrade of your independence. They mean well. Of course they do. But suddenly you're no longer mom or grandpa. You become, "Are you sure you should be doing that?" A strange historical tidbit. In ancient Rome, aging senators were revered for their wisdom, but quietly pushed out of positions of power when their health slipped. The image of dignity remained, but the control, gone. Sound familiar? Experts still debate how much seniors should share about their health with family. One school of thought says transparency helps with support and planning. The other argues it opens the door to unnecessary micromanagement and premature decisions, like, say, suggesting a senior living facility because you tripped once while reaching for grape jelly. And here's the thing, they always say, "You can tell us anything." But you've lived long enough to know some truths don't get you support. They get you restrictions. You remember that time last year you fainted just for a second in the hallway. You didn't tell anyone, not even the doctor. If you're being honest, you just sat there for a minute, gathered yourself, and went back to watching Jeopardy, like nothing happened. It wasn't denial, it was strategy. Because once you open that door, it doesn't close. Suddenly, every cough becomes a case study. Every forgotten word is a concern. And look, it's not like you're ignoring it. You manage your body like it's a very delicate rental car. carefully, but still determined to get somewhere. A fun fact you read once: jellyfish are technically biologically immortal. They don't age the way we do. Instead, they regenerate. You think about that sometimes, usually while rubbing your hip and wishing you could regenerate out of this particular discomfort. But you're not a jellyfish. You're a human with pride, with instincts, and with a lifetime's worth of data on what happens when you say, something feels off. So you say nothing, or not everything at least. You keep the heating pad under the bed. You memorize which rug corner tries to trip you. You've got a system, and tonight, as you slide under the covers, you feel it again. That tiny pinch in your lower back. The one that flares up when it's cold. The one you've named Mildred, because if you have to suffer, you might as well make it funny. You whisper, "Calm down, Mildred," and adjust the pillow behind your knees, because here's the truth: you're still here, still you, still sharp, still breathing, still choosing what to reveal and what to hold close. It's not about hiding, it's about owning your story, even the parts written in discomfort and silence. Now tuck in a little deeper. The air's just cool enough. The weight of the blanket is perfect, and we're not done yet. Just a couple more layers left to peel back. Sleep's not far, but neither is the next secret. So stay with me. You stir slightly, not quite asleep, not quite awake. The ceiling above you fades in and out, a soft blur of shadows from the trees swaying gently outside. You listen. There's a clock ticking somewhere, one of those old ones that doesn't apologize for being loud. And in this quiet, something else surfaces, another secret. The 7th. You don't talk about money, not the whole picture, not the worries you still carry like loose change rattling around your coat pocket, not the fear that maybe, just maybe, you didn't plan quite enough, or worse, that even if you did, something unexpected will come along and eat through your safety net like termites in an old porch. Your family assumes you're fine. You've let them believe that. You even joke about it sometimes, how you're worth more now than you've ever been, and how social security just makes it rain. But inside, you know the numbers. You know which bills you can delay without penalty. You know how much the grocery store eggs cost on Tuesday versus Friday. And you know, one bad month and the margins get razor thin. There's that historic moment you always think about, the Great Depression. Not the textbooks, but the personal stories. People hiding cash in cookie tins, sewing coins into hems, smiling through dinners made entirely of boiled cabbage and hope. You see yourself in them more than you admit. Experts clash on this one. Some say total financial transparency helps families prepare and protect aging parents. Others warn it opens doors to manipulation, control, and, let's be real, bad decisions made in your name. You lean cautious. You've seen families fracture over inheritances that didn't even exist. You've heard how helping can turn into managing. And you felt that quiet shift when someone finds out how much you do or don't have. It's not even always malicious. Sometimes it's just assumption. Oh, you don't need that. Why are you still paying for that? Let's set up automatic transfers so we can help. Help. Such a loaded word. There's a weird fact you remember. Raccoons, those little masked bandits, can remember solutions to problems for over 3 years. You've been solving financial puzzles a lot longer than that, thank you very much. And still, you let them believe you're doing fine. Because if you told them you were worried about medical bills, about rising rent, about your old car that makes a new sound every week, they'd panic. Or worse, they'd pity. You've already downsized. You've cut corners so sharp you could shave with them. You even took up those online survey sites once. 15 minutes for a $2 gift card. Because hey, lunch is lunch, but they don't know that. And you're not about to tell them. You remember the time your friend Marjorie mentioned needing help with her HOA fees. Her kids reacted like it was a scandal, talked behind her back, set up a group chat without her, one that, to this day, she still doesn't know she was added to by accident. You'd rather avoid the whole mess, so you keep your budget spreadsheets password protected. You check your balances in private. You turn down dinner invites with vague excuses, not because you don't want to go, but because a glass of wine at that restaurant is half a tank of gas. You know the value of $1, and more importantly, you know the value of silence. You roll over now, blanket tucked under your chin, the thought of those bank numbers drifting behind your eyes like ticker tape. You whisper, "Tomorrow will be okay." Because tonight at least you're warm, you're safe, you've still got choices, and as you drift deeper, you sense we're nearly there. Just one more secret left, resting gently beneath the others, waiting like the last line in a long, winding letter. Let's find it together. One more step. The night has folded in completely now. Everything is hushed. The air, the walls, even your thoughts tiptoe. The hum of the old fan in the corner has become a lullaby. But there's still something hanging in the air, like a door that was never closed properly. The eighth and final secret. You don't talk about the past, not all of it. Sure, you share the good stories, the ones with laughter and soft focus memories, the family vacations where everything went wrong but somehow turned out right. The prom picture that still gets trotted out at Thanksgiving for a laugh. But the darker corners, the regrets, the choices that still hum in your bones late at night, you keep those tucked away. You don't talk about that friendship you ended for the wrong reasons. Or the time you gave up on a dream because someone told you it was impractical. You never mention the letters you never sent, the words you never said, the chances you never took, because it's easier for them to see you as the version of you that's already been edited. There's that fascinating historical quirk. Queen Victoria burned hundreds of her personal letters before she died, erasing decades of her life from history. Some say it was about dignity. Others think it was fear of judgment. Maybe it was both. You get that. Because once you open the vault, you can't control what people do with the contents, and besides, what good would it do? If you told them that you still think about that person from 1974, yes, that one, and wonder what might have happened if you just said, wait, before they walked away? They'd look at you like you were a stranger. You once heard that? Octopuses, those brilliant, squishy escape artists, have short lives despite their intelligence. They live intensely, then vanish, leaving no trace. You sometimes feel a little like that. Like the you from 10, 20, 40 years ago lived a whole other life that no one else remembers. And here's what the experts say, at least the ones still arguing at conferences and in dusty journals. Processing the past aloud helps ease emotional burdens in old age. But then others argue it can reopen wounds that should be left closed. A quiet peace is better than a noisy reckoning. You lean toward peace, not denial, just selection. You've built a version of your story that keeps the train on the tracks. The kind of story where you're the hero, or at least the survivor, not the one where you made a mess and never quite cleaned it up. Because at this stage of life, legacy feels like something that starts with what you don't say. You want your kids to remember you strong, capable, maybe a little mysterious, but never broken. So when they ask about that part of your life, about a name they don't recognize in an old yearbook or a job you left suddenly, you smile. You say, "Oh, it was a long time ago," and they nod, satisfied. The secret remains safe. But tonight, just between us, you remember, and maybe that's enough, because memory is its own kind of truth. Not always spoken, but always carried. You pull the blanket up to your chin again, feeling the weight of it settle over you like soft reassurance. You've kept these 8 secrets not out of fear, but out of care. For them. For you. For the life you've tried to live gently, with as few cracks as possible. And now, the story slows. The house is quiet. Even the fan hum has softened. Let's take a breath together. You've earned your peace. Let the past rest, where it lies like dust in a sunbeam, visible, real, but no longer needing to be stirred. The night is here. The weight is lighter now. You're not alone. You're just still.